I'm seeing some pretty terrible stuff going on in the world. Where's God?
If anything, we're going backwards. We're starting to lose the essence of what makes us deeply technologically advanced as human beings, which is the search for the soul.
Depression has never been higher. Suicide rates have never been higher. Loneliness has never been felt more. How do you actually define progress?
Societies, communities, they were designed with spiritual ethics in mind and morale to ultimately uplift people spiritually. Whereas I feel like in today's world, we've kind of gone, let's invest time and money and into material things, and it's a very atheistic material development.
If we just sacrifice a tiny amount of just trying to satisfy tongue, belly, genitals, etc., then the hope of the human race is going to be unlimited compared to what it is right now. But still, we're deeply dissatisfied, and it's because of this misuse of the human form of life. Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
Hello and welcome to another special roundtable episode of For Soul's Sake. I'm here back with my best mates, Keli and Nāma. Grateful for both of you. Thank you so much. We want to start by celebrating Keli got engaged.
I did. Round of applause.
Amazing.
Tell us about it, man.
What do you want to know?
I want to know all the juicy details.
The
Did you get down
details.
on one knee,
I did,
or was it
yeah.
too cheesy? Oh,
No,
you
no.
did? Okay.
Well, so I've been planning the engagement for probably a year. So I knew it was going to happen for a year.
Wow.
And it started off as this like...
Look at him go all like smiley. Like, yeah.
He looked out
I'm
into
so
the distance.
romantic, so I'm like,
He looked out
I'm
into
going
the
to take my
distance.
time.
Do it, bro.
No, it started off as this rooftop setting sun proposal in Jaipur, Rajasthan, and like camels flying in and
Flying
like
camels.
smoke machines and disco balls, and it was going to be really elaborate and fantastic, fireworks and everything. And then I just had to dial it down, and I was thinking, when it comes to love, you can do something externally very impressive and loud and amazing, or you can focus on like the substance and the feeling of the thing. So I kept it very simple. Basically, we met because I was opening a Hare Krishna nightclub in London. It was a sober nightclub called Studio 108.
It's not very nightclubby now, is it?
It's not. And I asked my now fiance to come and do a mural because she's an artist.
Nice.
So she started on the mural. Then I said, let's go for lunch. So we went for lunch to a park, Russell Square, by the British Museum. And we were sat down. I've been living as a monk for 5 years at this point, so I haven't really spoken to girls much. Completely lost my riz. Anti-riz, right?
Anti-riz.
I had no idea what I was doing. So I said, I know this is going to sound weird, but can I have a hug? And she said,
Yeah, that does sound weird, doesn't it?
it's a bit creepy, isn't it?
Can we hug it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, okay, sure. So we had a hug.
Oh.
It lasted far too long.
Oh.
And then afterwards, we both kind of looked at each other and she said, are you looking for a relationship?
Wow.
And which I wasn't. And I said, yes. Straight away, like I was yes. And basically, we've been inseparable since that day.
No way.
So what happened? This is the romantic part.
That was the first time you met her?
That was the first day we met.
No way, wow.
So we took 2 leaves from the tree that we'd been sitting under and we pressed them in books. And because she's an artist, she did a piece of art with the 2 leaves connected with a spiral. So when I commissioned the ring to be made, the engagement ring, I got the goldsmith to engrave 2 leaves with a spiral on the back of the ring.
Wow.
And I proposed to her under that tree that we met at 3 years prior. So this was like our anniversary day. And no one in the park knew. It was like it was so funny. It was like just us. I even thought like some guy was going to approach me for money or like a fag at one point and completely ruin the whole thing. But it was just so chill and lovely. And I said, let's go back to that park because we haven't been back for 3 years. We'll take some pictures just to commemorate it. So I set up my phone on a tripod, and the first one, like the flash went off, 3 flashes and cute picture. And then I said, let's do a silly one now. So I set my phone up, I put it on film secretly, and we stood there and I said, oh, I think the flash isn't working or something. And then she was like, oh, what's going on? And then I got on one knee and she just burst out crying. And that was it. And it was so blissful and like easy. And I've never felt more sure of something in my life. Like I really struggle with decisions sometimes, but this was like, it felt like God had taken us both and just went, and just smashed us together. And you can't ignore something like that. It was like, this is meant to be. And so, it was wonderful. And a friend of mine said he realized how from that act of love came all of this other love. We got hundreds of messages and cards and presents and well wishes. But he was saying,
I haven't got my present.
Yeah, where's my present, bro?
I need to get you a present. I'll sort it out.
But my friend was saying, it's so interesting that one act of love created all of these other acts of love. And he was saying, actually, you don't have to wait for a special occasion to do that. If you're thoughtful enough, you can create those acts of love and kindness every day. And in that way, it creates like a domino effect of loving kindness, ripples. And so that's something I've been thinking about, obviously, as well. And it doesn't have to be as grand as a proposal, but it could just be a small gesture. And I think there are people out there they're like very good at coaxing love out of people, and they don't even have to do anything. Like Swamis, Radhanath Swami, for instance, he'll walk into a room and there's just love. Like everyone's just like, oh my God, they're losing their mind because he's just tapped into that at all times. So I've been thinking about that, and but that's the short story.
Congrats, bro.
Thank you.
Really happy for you.
Thank you.
It's so nice to see people genuinely happy. Like you've seen that. Like I can see like you're really
I'm feeling all romantical now.
It's
Speaking about romantical, Nāma.
What about me?
There's a new lady in Nāma's life too.
Is there?
There is. Indeed.
Confirmed. He's off the market, people.
No, it's interesting what Keli said that with certain decisions you just know. And you didn't have to like dibble dabble about, is this right, is it not? You just and it just aligns. And if you've never felt that, when you hear that, it's like you don't really know what that feels like. And I feel for myself, I feel that now. I feel like and there's not a single bone in my body that's saying no.
Wow.
And it's just like I never did anything to find this, right? I never searched or anything, and it's just sometimes you have to trust.
You did go all the way to New Zealand, mate.
No, but I'm a risk taker, man. Like sometimes risks get me in trouble, but sometimes they work out. And
But I get what you mean.
Someone asked me, is she the one? And I was thinking like about the one. And how I do and I don't believe in there being the one, because say you find the one, but you don't put the effort in, the relationship's not going to last. And I also think you could find someone who's not the one, but if you put the effort in, it will be a good relationship, right? But I don't know. Do you believe in the one?
I think it's who are you willing to fight for? Like someone might not be perfect, but perfection doesn't really exist anyway. But it's I'm happy enough that I'm willing to fight for this person. I'm willing to make it work, right? And so for me, And I guess the other thing is when people say they found the one, but then the one ceases to exist, then what does that mean? Were they always the one? Will they always remain the one? Or will there be another one? If there's another one, there's two.
This is like mathematics beyond my vernacular. So
do
I
you
don't know
believe
where
in
we're
the
at.
one?
I do.
Davey's watching, by the way.
Yeah, I love you, Davey. No, I do love you a lot. But what I was thinking is, as the established older chap here with 2 kids and a wife for 6 years, one piece of advice: always remember that feeling of that initial spark. Like, I think the hardest thing I've had to go through from a relationship point of view is having kids. And that's been really bearing down on just the connection between my wife and I.
Mm.
And you think like, oh, it's a blessing. And to be honest, it is a great blessing. It's taught me so many things, but it's also been the greatest test of my life to have kids and to maintain a relationship whilst having children, because all your love goes there. And so it's definitely been, just being vulnerable and being honest, it's been a hard period of time. And I've just realized, I've come to realize that if you don't make an effort to be kind at home and consistently kind, even, okay, kids is all maybe even one side, because some people don't maybe even want kids. But the point is that as things progress in life and both of you change as people and life, yeah, it happens. Just try to maintain the friendship that initially sparked your union. And that's kind of been something in the last month where I've been really putting conscious effort into. Like, I genuinely think it's important for me to bring a good energy into the relationship with endeavor, rather than just being like, no, we're married now, it's done. You know, I don't need to like make an effort anymore, it's done. And it sounds like a really cliche and something that most people already know, but I'm learning it. So
we went to see, maybe we were all there, we went to see Jay Shetty speak in London, and he was talking about this idea of learning to love the same person again and again, because we change and they change. And if we're attached to loving the person that we met, when as they change, we won't feel that connect. I thought that was really profound.
Yeah, and you know, it's really weird because I've been in denial about it for a long time. That no, my wife and I are like great, but I was in denial for so long that everything was great. And you know, and funny that you mentioned Jay, because I just went to LA a couple of weeks back, and he was the person that catalyzed me being different now. Just seeing how him and his wife, Radhi, they interact with one another and they love each other. I came away from LA going, if nothing else, the kirtans were great, the concert was great, you know, the service that I did out there, I felt like I really gave my best. But what I walked away from that trip was, the lesson that I walked away from that trip was that I need to make a serious effort. And I spoke to him about it, and he said, yeah, of course it's a conscious effort. It's not something that I'm just like, I'm always kind of loving. No, I have to consciously think about it. So thanks, Jay. Appreciate you. Love you. Thank you.
Fascinating.
We got a verse today. It's from the Bhagavad Gita. We don't have a physical copy, so we're going to go technology style. And
is that scandalous?
it is.
I don't know how authentic that is.
It's the Bhagavad Gita. It's just in a different form. Tolerate it. Okay, the verse today is from chapter 4, verse number 7. Translation goes, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, Arjun, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. And that's Krishna speaking. And the topic that we had in mind was around ancient wisdom, modern times, but I'm going to let you guys open up because I didn't quite understand what the theme was. I'm kind of sitting here as a third wheel. So yeah, tell me what we're talking about.
We were just talking about ancient civilizations, lost civilizations, and this idea, which is maybe controversial. The Vedic perspective is that actually everything is deteriorating. The length in which the human being lives is getting shorter. Our looks are getting shorter or worse. Our
looks aren't getting shorter.
We're actually shrinking as well, according to the Vedas. Like, human beings used to be much taller. Everything's declining. Our knowledge and our ability, our virtues, everything's declining. However, we understand in a Western paradigm that, you know, technology is helping us to evolve as a species, and we're becoming smarter and better, and, you know, we're trying to live longer and look better. So I just thought that was an interesting topic. And also, where does God fit in with that? And if Krishna's saying, you know, I descend, I come again and again when there is a rise of irreligion, I'm seeing some pretty terrible stuff going on in the world. Where's God? You know? So that's what I was thinking.
I think it's quite so like ancient civilizations are really fascinating, because when you look at ancient civilizations, you you understand that they were able to do very advanced things, create, amazing structures. If you look at the pyramids, that's one very classic sort of scenario.
Either of you been to
Giza?
Giza?
Not been to Giza, mate.
Yeah, bit of a geezer though, isn't it?
But there's this whole story around the fact that with the pyramids, there was no scaffolding, there's no equipment. How did they actually build these pyramids to such intricate levels, all the tunnels inside, without also light? There was no light, right? Magic. But then even in like the Vedic times, if you look at Vedic mathematics, a very ancient form of mathematics, the way you calculate things is a very simple process to solve very complex things. So there's this kind of notion that like ancient civilizations were primitive and weren't able to process complex things. And so we kind of put a value in the modern world that if something is super complex, it's a sign of our advancement. When actually the same things were done a long time ago in a very simple fashion, which was perhaps more intelligent, actually, arguably, right? So I find there's so much to learn from these ancient civilizations. And sometimes I don't know why society at the moment feels like we kind of ignore the ancient temple or the ancient building that we can see that's thousands of years old, right? The intricacy of that place, the artwork, the detail. But we don't sometimes match the two understandings that we're actually degraded. The world has actually gone through degradation, and it's kind of like, oh, that's nice. It's a big tourist attraction. But what does that actually mean for the reality that we live and that has been there thousands and thousands of years before? I find that sometimes it's a big illusion.
Yeah, like, did you know that the weapons of old, according to the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, those weapons were nuclear weapons. The astras, Brahma astras that they were using were considered to be more powerful than nuclear weapons. That's mad.
And how were they evoked?
Through just mantra and by chanting.
Through sound,
yeah, through sound.
There's a great spiritual teacher who calls it sonic technology. I really like that play on words. But and he says also this is how these great structures were built. And you can still see it in remote parts of the world today where people can evoke frequency and use vibration to even levitate stone, like that weighs tons. And like all of this far out stuff that we wouldn't believe because we're very narrow minded. But
yeah, even like on YouTube, you can search up like the lost city of Dwarka, like Krishna's kingdom. And, when they do an analysis of that dynasty, they can see that this was a seriously organized, technologically advanced civilization. And what kind of stumps me is that I feel like, if anything, we're going backwards because we're becoming so lost in things like the iPhone 16 Pro Max. We're getting so lost in that we're starting to lose the essence of what makes us deeply technologically advanced as human beings, which is the search for the soul. That's the most technologically advanced thing that we can actually receive in this lifetime and conceive of, but yet we become so absorbed in how to wirelessly unlock. I don't know. I've lost my train of thought. But you get what I mean.
that sounds good though. Wirelessly unlock
Stuff.
Good, huh? I'm in.
Car keys,
Sign me up.
Yeah. You don't even need it. You have to have a key to turn the ignition. Now it's just a button. How does it know?
That's true. Or like a fingerprint or something.
Yeah. Mad.
Face ID soon.
Face ID.
The first guy.
You're getting lost again, see?
There's this guy who's got the first Neuralink chip in his brain, and he's like playing video games and doing all this stuff.
What was it?
Just with his eyesight. And someone asked him like, "How does that feel?" And he's like, "I can't explain to you how weird this is."
Yeah.
I
was in New York with Cabby recently, and Cabby loves trying new things. Yeah. So we went into.
He loves getting other people to try new things with him as well.
He doesn't feel complete unless you're part of the new thing.
Exactly.
So anyway, we were
so we can validate his emotions about the thing.
He's like, I really want to try this Aztec death whistle, but you have to do it with me. Like, bro, I'm okay.
We went into Grand Central Station, and there's an Apple store in Grand Central Station, and we went up, and he signed me up for the Apple Vision Pro test.
Okay.
So then I put these things on.
The goggles.
It's mad. Like you could have, because I'm thinking about the application of mantra experiences. Like if it does go that way, I don't think it's quite there. But what I did say to Kavi was that it's interesting that they've now captured all of this data for everyone that's put that headset on, because it tracks your eyes. So it would track, I'm sure, if I foiled you, Apple, then send me a kind letter and some products and I'll delete this episode. But I think it does track where my eyes were going. And so therefore it tells the developers what kind of stuff they need to develop more on. Because that's not yet there. Like after 10 minutes of putting that on your head, it does get a bit heavy. But you can see, like, as they make it smaller and smaller and then chips in the brain, they'll know exactly what kind of content people will want to use that for. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be sex. It's going to be gaming. It's going to be concert experience. Like, there was one part in the test where you see Alicia Keys up front. And you can, like, see her skin. You can see the pores in her skin. It's nuts. Like literally like this. And she's performing. It's like literally you're hearing and seeing that person as if they were right in front of you.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm in two minds about it, because we see progress all around us. We see technology advancing, and obviously everything that's going on is pretty cool, right? We're now achieving the things that we were dreaming of 20 years ago. We were making these elaborate sci-fi fiction films about all of this crazy technology that we're living out. Back to the Future. Banging. So, yeah, but where are we actually? Because, you know, depression has never been higher. Suicide rates have never been higher. Loneliness has never been felt more on such a large level. There's so much aggression and people are feeling so lost. So is that progress? And maybe that's something the Bhagavad Gita is getting at as well, is how do you actually define progress? Right?
It's the paradox of our time, no? Like more connections than ever, but more lonely at the same time. It's a paradox. And there's this wonderful story in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Dhruva. And to cut a long story short, Dhruva goes through this intense period of tapasya, sacrifice, and yajna. He's performing a lot of devotional activities to get to a point where he receives the darshan, he comes into the presence of divinity, of God. And in this presence of God, he realizes that all of his material dreams were no more than shards of glass. And Gauravani, who's a good friend of ours, he tells the story way better than I'm doing justice right now. But this point of seeing everything that we're advancing towards as shards of glass and not a real jewel. Like, what is the real jewel of human society, of being in this human form of life? What is the real jewel? Tell us, Nāma.
Just to step back before we get into that, is
He loves
that was epic though. I really liked the setup there. Crossed it in.
He was like, he could have just smacked it
throws
for 6,
me in
isn't
there.
it? Could have smacked that one for 6.
I'm setting it up.
All right.
I'm reeling the bat back.
All right.
What real progression is the why behind the investment of time and energy in the advancement?
You're going to have to repeat that one.
The why, the factor that says whether a society is advanced or not, is the why behind where your energies, talents, and time are invested in developing. For example, in ancient times, and Keli was just sort of mentioning this, it was a very God-conscious world. It was a very God-conscious culture. Societies, communities, they were designed with spiritual ethics in mind and morale to ultimately uplift people spiritually. There was, between warriors, there was morale. Between business people, there was business ethics between them, right? There was competition, but it was all done to sustain community ultimately, to keep the body and the soul together, as the term goes. But there was always spiritual advice, there was always spiritual insight. Whereas I feel like in today's world, we've kind of gone, just the capitalist world says, let's invest time and money and into material things. And it's a very atheistic material development, right? Like I love in the poem, like the paradoxes of the modern time, it says that, like everyone's got a smartwatch, like an Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch is supposed to give you more convenience. And so the one line says, we have more convenience, but less time. We have more convenience, but we have less time. And I just find, why is that? What is distracting us? Human beings, we've seen, like, we're so intelligent. We can solve complex things. We can create great solutions. But at the same time, we're totally misdirected in what we're trying to achieve. Because we have things like I just saw on the news the other day, the first Brits are going to be recorded for the suicide pod. Have you heard about that?
No.
The suicide pod?
No, what's that?
So the suicide pod was developed, and it just recently got developed somewhere in Europe. I think Scandinavia, somewhere in Scandinavia. And it's basically a pod where you can have a pain-free death.
No, come on.
Yep. Pain-free death. There was a whole lawsuit against it, but it's apparently been passed. And the first Brits, they're going to go for it, and they're going to record it. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What has got us to the state where people willingly want to just finish it off? Where is all this advancement worth? What is it really worth?
Yeah, it's like the Bhagavad Gita tells us, and Bhakti philosophy tells us, that the reason why we're here on this material planet is because we wanted to enjoy separately from God. And now that we have all these conveniences to enjoy, you know, even so much as we were hungry earlier, or Nāma was hungry and he picked up a Huel bottle. And on Huel, the packaging says that this can replace a meal. It's got all the nutrition to replace a meal. So we've got all the conveniences, everything's there, but still we're deeply dissatisfied. And it's because of this misuse of the human form of life. And it's something that moves me to like heartbreak almost. That if we just surrendered a little bit to the notion that life isn't meant for material pleasure, if we just surrendered a little bit of our time towards the pursuit of spiritual acquisition, the pursuit of spiritual knowledge, the pursuit of spiritual connection, if we just sacrificed a tiny amount of just trying to satisfy tongue, belly, genitals, etc., then the hope of the human race is going to be unlimited compared to what it is right now. And it's not to be dire and not to be like, you know, I don't mean to how to say, be super conservative and preachy right now. That's not my mood. But it is also like a little part of me break when you spoke about suicide pods. That's like the ultimate. You've got to the point where nothing can satisfy you apart from killing yourself, and that's heartbreaking.
Do you know what is firing me up at the moment? It's this idea that all we need to succeed in life is one person that believes in us. And so I was thinking, when we contemplate older times or ancient times, we think they were religious and simple, and now people are more secular but more intelligent and advanced, or whatever we say. But I think not much has actually changed. When you read about the Vedas, you hear about the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas and the Shudras and the Brahmanas, and how there were people who were intelligent, there were people who were strong and warrior-like, there were people who were business-like, there were people who were simple, and they all lived in harmony together around a common cause, which was God consciousness. And we see those same people in the world today. We see that there are administrators, and we see that there are more simple people, and there are business-minded people. But I think the difference is when God isn't at the center, it's a more dislocated society, right? And for me, I think that that's the missing piece. And what is firing me up is that all it takes, as I said, is one person to believe in us for us to succeed. So imagine if we could be that person for one other person, and they could be that person for or if we could be that person for 5 people. That doesn't take much, or for 10 people, right? But where are we pointing people? We're actually trying to point them to something transpersonal, something beyond us, something that is God-centric, because that is then infallible.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, that's like the silver lining in terms of like how we can actively change the world and try and like steer the narrative in a positive way.
And it's to give people the experience that transcendental activity is real. Because right now everyone's stuck in this whole paradigm where, no, it is all about mass materialism. It is all about advancing society in a certain way, because they have no taste or even experience of transcendental happiness and pleasure internally, right? If we can be like well wishers of others, to give them that experience, that 5-10 minute, there's something here. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You know, that
5 minutes can change a life as well.
Straight up.
totally.
Straight up.
And then someone to say, and I love what you said, Keli, around, I believe in you.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, I was going for a really tough part in my life. And a mentor of mine, he just texted me one day and he goes, I said to him, I was like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And he texted me and he just goes, Nāma, I believe in you. He just texted me that. I looked at that message and I still have that today.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's all I need. It's like, let's go. It's such powerful words. Right?
But one question that I want to bring back is, in this verse, we're hearing that Krishna is saying, I descend again and again and again.
Where are you now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is Krishna, Radhika?
Yeah, well, according to the Bhakti tradition, we understand that, yes, Krishna descends in different ages and different forms, and divinity manifests according to the time, place, and circumstance. And in this age, it's mentioned in many different places, but the one verse that comes to mind right now is in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. It's like the postgraduate study of Bhakti. And it talks about, I'll just repeat the verse because that's the only way I can remember what it says. Kaler doshanide rajan ashtihi eko mahant guna kirtanat eva krishnasya mukta sangha param brajet. That kaler doshanide rajan, that this age is an age of hypocrisy, of violence, and it's a really degraded age that we live in right now. No surprises there. But ashtihi eko mahant guna, there is one incredible, great quality of this age, kirtanat eva krishnasya, by praising and glorifying divinity, and by recognizing that we're spiritual persons on a material experience here in this planet, by glorifying divinity, kirtanat eva krishnasya, mukta sangha param brajet, that one is liberated to the highest param brajet, to the highest position. And so it's simple in one sense. Just chant and be happy, innit? In one sense. I know it's easier said than done, and the mind will tell you all sorts of stuff, even when you are quote unquote a practicing bhakti yogi. It's easier said than done.
It just brings to mind this thought. So today was my fiance's birthday, so we went out for a meal, and I asked, the meal came, and they didn't bring us knives and forks, but there were knives and forks in a small like holder that was right in front of her. And so she was looking around, and I was just like,
dude.
And then she saw them eventually after like 10 seconds. She was like, I'm such an idiot, right? They were right in front of her. And I just put the two together because I think when we look for God, we're expecting some mad thing to happen, right? The clouds burst open, or he comes through the door or something, and like make some deep point. But what if God is there right in front of you, and you just can't see it because it's almost a bit too close? And Rumi said this, actually, the great Sufi poet. He said, I've traveled to mosques and temples and churches looking for God, and in the end I found him inside of myself. It's like almost so close that you miss it, So it's interesting that in this age you're saying God is found in the name of God, and that's how you can experience God. But if we're waiting for this incredible appearance to happen, we might be waiting a long time.
It's like often what I think of it as is putting the beer goggles on,
right?
Like rose tinted glasses. Like you see everything in that particular vision. Like if you can try as an experiment. I don't know if I'm being too fanatical here, but if you just cancel out a whole day and test this theory, we've done so many weird things for a full day to test all sorts of other theories as well. I think we can talk about that maybe. But if you just cancel out one day in your life and spend time meditating on the name of divinity, whatever name that you're called to, it could be Ram, Krishna, Allah, God, whatever, hallowed Father. Is that the right way to address? Whichever name, and just spend time meditating on that. And then, even if it's not a full day, but a couple of hours, and then walk out into the world and just notice how your consciousness and your awareness has that rose tint over it. You start seeing things almost Krishnaized. And just test the theory. Let me know in the comment section what happens.
It's interesting because this isn't even an ancient Vedic practice. It's mentioned in the Bible, in the Quran. It's
Hallowed be
the
thy
practice of sound, godly sound vibration is a very universal thing, right? And I find we people think it's alien, but actually it's very common. Sound is. I was thinking about this the other day. I was driving to my uncle's house and I had an album playing in the background, and this album was, according to my memory, the first ever music I heard.
Really?
The earliest point in my life.
Go on,
the first
do
piece of
share. Who is
music.
it?
So it's like progressive trance, electronic 90s electronics by a guy called Robert Miles.
Robert Miles.
Yeah, Robert Miles.
Good.
He's an electronic DJ, and his major hit is called Children, and it's called the Dream version. And anyway, so I used to love it, but when I heard it again, it just took me back to me being 7 years old with my uncle in his car, red Peugeot 405. Yeah, this is the one.
Is this going to be like a 3-minute build until it drops?
Oh no, everyone knows this track.
You just have to go.
I don't know this.
You just have to go on the journey with it.
All right, yeah, go on. Tell the story.
So anyway, it's us driving through South London, me 7 years old. My uncle's got the cassette. It's not even a CD. He's got the cassette on. And this is like the first, if I think about my history as a kid, this is the first sound I ever heard, the first music. So every time I listen to this, it takes me back to 7-year-old Nāma in the car, just cruising. It's the best, man.
I had this funny moment where I was on a motorway, and he was like, my dad was pumping some music or the other, and I just remember like bopping my head, and the guy that was driving alongside us, he drives past the car and just goes, I'll never forget that.
But the phenomenal thing is, it had the ability to transport my consciousness.
Yeah.
The things I heard, remember, saw, felt, smelt.
Yeah.
It literally transported me. And that's just some Italian dude like making some techno music. Like,
God
you know.
bless Robert Miles, eh?
Yeah.
What about you? What was the first piece of music that you remember? I'm curious because you're a connoisseur.
I was a bit of a strange kid because as people were listening to like the Spice Girls and Franz Ferdinand and like all this cool like LL Cool J or whatever they were listening to, I was listening to like blues music, like Chuck Berry and Ray Charles and.
All right, let's listen to some Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry
Chuck
Essentials.
Berry.
Tell me what song. John B. Good.
Johnny B. Goods. Yeah.
Johnny B. Good. Sorry. This is what you were listening to as a child.
Yeah, man. Woo!
I mean, it's kind of cool.
The funny thing was, I got this on a CD on like one of those Walkmans.
Yeah. Sony
And
Walkmans.
I went into the shop. I was like, "Mum, I really want a Sony Walkman," and she was like, "Cool, we'll take you to Argos." And they only had one left in pink.
Yeah, I knew it.
Bright pink. And anyway, I put Chuck Berry on, and he does this thing where he dances and he does this like air guitar whilst like kicking his foot. So I was doing this around the living room, really getting into it. But the Walkman, like the CD, it would bounce, so the music would stop every time I danced. So it was like really annoying. So I had to just sit there and like kind of just like subtly groove out. But yeah, I was like listening to all this like old music, like blues and jazz and stuff. And also like my father's a musician and my uncle and my brother, so I was around live music and I always had musicians come into the house and coming and playing, and like it was always there. There were pictures of me on my first birthday. If you look at 10 pictures, and every picture I'm holding a different instrument. I'm like holding drumsticks in one and a guitar that's like 4 times the size of me in another, and it's just like this. I don't know. It's just always been there.
Yeah.
But I like this idea of how it's almost like a time machine. It's like a capsule, and it can transport you. And isn't that interesting when it's applied to mantra?
Yeah.
You know, and any sound vibration, really, it can take us back.
Yeah, a spiritual time capsule that takes us back to the origins of the soul.
Takes you back to a time, a memory, a space, and activities and identity.
I remember asking someone in a Om Kirtan, Friday night Kirtan, how did you feel? And one of the persons, I remember, said it felt like they were in a groove. Do you remember that person that said that?
Oh, yeah.
that felt like it was like they're walking down a path that they'd already walked down. And we haven't seen that fella in a while, but
He's still walking.
He's walking down the group.
still walking.
I saw him in Chester last week.
On that note, we're going to close off this episode. Thank you all so much for being here on this episode of For Soul's Sake. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. Tell other people about it. We want to bring loads of people to this conversation on spirituality, honest spirituality. From Nāma, Keli, and I, thank you so much for being here. See you on the next episode of For Soul's Sake. Goodbye. If you love this podcast, you'll love my interview with Ambika Devi on how art and spirituality can be used to make a difference in this world.
The only way you can really be happy is when you serve others and when you have a purpose to connect with God. That's the only way you will be happy. Otherwise, no money, no fame, no beauty, nothing can really fulfill you, you know? And then we are living beings that the only thing that can fulfill us is love and service.